It's a really good bag one, that one. Maybe I should put a 7 wood in the bag. Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about that top half of the bag. So this is a common problem I see with people who come to get lessons with me. We tend to see people with lots of 4 irons, 3 irons and 3 woods. This is an area where I think people can really improve. I almost feel like they've got these clubs in the bag that they just carry around because they're supposed to have them in the bag, but they don't actually use them except maybe to chip out from underneath the trees. So let's talk about today some clubs that you can use to replace those clubs so that you've got extra tools in your bag, and maybe some of the reasons why these clubs aren't working for you. So in my hands I have a 7 wood. I've got the TaylorMade QI 35 here. One thing to note is I think the shaft is going to be a bit light for me. It's a 50 gram reg. I would probably normally use a 70 gram shaft in my fairway wood, so we'll see how it goes, but it's the only option I've got available to me, and it's the right loft, so I'm going to use it. I can't see that shaft making too much of a difference in terms of the overall end result, but just something to keep in mind in case you see some funny ball flights at times. I've got my 4 iron here, which is making its return to my bag for today at least. We'll see if it sticks around. And I've got my hybrid here, so this hybrid has replaced my 4 iron in my bag, just like it probably should for a lot of you out there. But let's talk about why. All these clubs are the same loft, so there's no difference in terms of static loft, so how they set up at setup. The biggest difference is going to come from performance of the club head itself and the dynamic loft that's delivered at impact. Let's get into it. Alright, so I'm going to start off with 4 iron here. I've got a green set up there at 230 yards, so this should roughly be my 230 yard club depending on how well I strike it, which, well, we'll find out I guess. But some of the key things we're going to look for here are going to be the peak height that I can get these clubs to go, and the stopping power I can get with these clubs as well potentially some distance issues. That's a decent strike to start off with, but that is miles right. Whee. And that's probably why the 4 iron stays out of my bag. There we go, there's one out there at 230 or thereabouts, finally. Took me 5 shots to get it out there though. Hybrid next. The thing with 4 iron is I find that when I mishit it, I'm getting punished severely for it. I'm curious to see if this shows up in the test as well. So this is my hybrid, 21 degrees of loft. So I've mishit that one and it's still going to perform pretty well. Oh, and again, it's big draw. I got some big draws going on at the moment. While I'm hitting these shots, collecting some data, depending on which part of the world you're in, let's talk about why these clubs perform differently, where the benefits may lie for you, and how each club can possibly help you improve your game. When we tend to take speed away from golf, things start to bunch up in terms of distance at the longer end of the bag, and that's why things like 7 woods and hybrids are so great. They got a slightly longer shaft, a bigger head, and in terms of the 7 wood, you get kind of like the driver technology in the head, where you get the thinner face to allow them to give you a bit more ball speed, a bit more mass behind the strike as well with a much larger head. And one thing that they don't really talk about is that when we're hitting the golf ball, the center of mass of the head, or the center of gravity of the head, wants to line up with the center of the mass of the shaft. And so with a fairway wood head, that center of gravity is much further back in the club head, and that club head is going to want to try and catch up to the handle, so you get this added loft benefit. So the club head trying to catch up is starting to add loft to the club face, which is why we tend to get these balls going higher. Now when you haven't got a lot of speed, if you make the length of shaft slightly longer and the head slightly bigger, we get that effect where the center of gravity is trying to catch up with the center of mass of the shaft, adding loft. You get a bit more height with a bit more ball speed, and that's where we get the extra distance from. So we start to get that gap between our 4 and 5 iron spreading out. The same thing is happening with a hybrid, but to a much lesser extent. You can sort of see with the less deep face on the, or less deep head, the center of gravity or center of mass of the club head is going to be further. It's not as far back as it would be the wood, which would be further back here. It's much more towards the club face. You still get the extra loft added and the slightly longer shaft, but not to the same extent that you do with a fairway wood. And this is why I highly recommend people go and try out 7 woods, 9 woods, 5 hybrids as well. This is going to give you more tools for around the golf course, and give you more options and situations to try and help you lower your golf scores. 7 wood time now. That is again a miss it. That has performed very well. It's got some curvature on it, but that is so high. It's going to land really nice and soft. It's almost 30 feet higher than my 4-iron, I think. That's just so much better for me. Well, for lots of people, really. What I'm really liking about the 7 wood so far is that I'm mishitting it, and the peak height is still up there with my hybrid and the 4-iron, if not slightly higher. So I'm really not losing that stopping power at all. Oh, that's a really good strike. Numbers time now, and we can sort of see that the numbers are kind of playing out how we might have expected them to, with the 4-iron launching the lowest at 11.5 degrees, the 7 wood launching at the highest at 12.5, although hybrid at 12.3 degrees, not that far away from the 7 wood, to be honest. What this means is that peak height wise, when we take into account that launch angle and that ball speed difference between the 4-iron and the 7 wood, we're seeing quite a big difference in peak height. Add into that there's a slightly more backspin. The standard deviations in the backspin are crossing over between 4-irons, hybrid, and the 7 wood. But taking the on average slightly more backspin in the 7 wood with that extra peak height, we're going to get slightly more stopping power. So if we're coming into a firm green, that 4-iron is going to have to land a lot shorter and then run up to our target. Whereas if we look at the hybrid and the 7 wood, they're going to be coming in and landing softer. I can be a bit more aggressive in terms of landing them closer to the hole, and then the control is much more in my hands, as much as control can be in your hands in golf. Other important things to note are the carry distance with the hybrid at 228 yards. That's how far the ball went in the air. Carry distance of 4-iron, 220 yards on average, and carry distance with the 7 wood at 231. So 7 wood going a bit further, but it did have quite a bit more ball speed than the other two clubs. Kind of expecting to see the ball go further with the 7 wood. It's got a slightly longer shaft. Where it becomes important is where we compare it, and I show you what my 4-iron does compared to my 5-iron, and the total distance or carry distance I'm getting in difference between those two. Each golf club is a tool that we can use to perform a job or a task for us when we're on the golf course, and if we have two clubs that are doing the same thing, then it's kind of pointless carrying those. I was swinging the 7 wood a bit faster, like I said just before. That's to be expected. Slightly longer shaft, going to give me that chance to create a bit more speed, and that extra speed is also going to give me a little bit more height. What's interesting to note is the difference in dynamic loft, so the loft that I deliver of the club at impact. With the 7 wood, which has 21 degrees of loft on it statically, so as you set it up, I'm actually delivering more loft than I started off with at 22. My hybrid, which is the same 21 degrees of loft, delivering that at 19.6, so roughly 20 degrees, basically what it started off with. But the 4-iron is down at 14 degrees of dynamic loft. It comes from, as I mentioned in the video, where the center of mass or the center of gravity of the club head trying to catch up with the center of mass of the shaft, adding that extra bit of loft, allowing us to get a bit more launch angle and therefore a bit more peak height. So that is where getting fitted for these clubs, trying them all out, and adding them to your bag is probably going to be a really good way for you to help you lower your scores. Just quickly, if you look at the 4-iron versus 5-iron, this is something that I see a lot of. People's 4-iron, 5-iron, and even 6-iron sometimes going way too close to each other, almost on top of each other. Now, I have a little bit of separation between my 4-iron and 5-iron, but it's nowhere near enough. We're kind of looking, for me, I'd be kind of looking between 15 and 20 yards of difference at this end of the bag, and with 7 yards difference, it's just not enough to really warrant me carrying 4-iron in my bag when you consider that my 4 hybrid is going 15 yards further than my 5-iron. It's got a good amount of backspin on it. It's going higher than my 4-iron, so it's going to stop quicker, go a bit more distance, and it just gives me that extra tool that I need to sort of split the gap between my irons and then my driver. There may be situations where a 4-iron would come in really handy, such as trying to hit it a bit lower, maybe hitting a low runner off the tee if we're into the wind or playing a links course and we're trying to keep it a bit more in play. But that's very specific, and it's not really what I need it for on a day-to-day basis. I would be better off putting a club like the hybrid that I do have in my bag, or the 7 wood into my bag, to give me more chances to play better golf, because those are going to stop quicker. As I mentioned earlier, I can be a bit more precise compared to that 4-iron where I'm really relying on bounce and roll. One last thing to mention on this page here is that although my 4-iron had a bit more ball speed on it, I actually found the 5-iron easier to hit. Obviously the shorter shaft, meaning that I was a bit more comfortable in hitting the ball in the middle of the club face. Therefore my results were a bit more consistent in terms of strike. And that again is another important thing when it comes to this area of the bag. If I'm going to miss hit my 4-iron like you would have seen me do in the earlier parts of the video, I don't need that. That's not going to help me. That 7-wood, that hybrid, when I miss-hit them, the results are still very similar to my good results. And golf is not about how good your good shots are. Golf is about how good your bad shots are. And the better your bad shots are, the better golf, the better scores you're going to have. And that's what we're looking for out of this game. That's all from me for now. If you have any questions or any comments, please post them in the comment section down below. If you'd like me to go more in depth on any of these things I've discussed in this video as well, just pop it in the comments down below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.